The events of this story begin in a village in which long ago, there was a battle between 5 heroes and one demonic dragon, which almost destroyed the entire world. He managed to stop, but before that he managed to take with him a lot of innocent lives. After their victory, they became very famous. The 4 heroes created their own families and subsequently created their own ministry of magic, and the age of magic came. It's a legend that little Jordan is always asking his father David to tell him. Most likely he will never get bored with it, because he admires these 5 heroes very much. Today he wondered why there were 4 families instead of 5 as there should be. Generally people say that the 5th hero sacrificed his life for this hard victory. The demonic dragon is not a forest boar, it was necessary to act as efficiently as possible. Jordan was very upset, because there could have been another 5th family. The boys originally came to the forest to get or to repair magical weapons, but right before the trek itself, their father changed his mind about taking a broken gun with him to make it easier to walk. There are rumors in the nearby villages that the monsters in the forest are infected, so they need to be extremely careful. On the way, Jordan accidentally noticed a body lying on the floor, and in a panic he shouted that it was a monster. His father reacted quickly and immediately reached for his gun. But when he took a closer look, he saw that there was a very ordinary guy lying on the ground, who probably requires first aid. When the boys approached him, the only thing they could immediately realize was that the victim was very hungry, and words such as meat, chicken leg, and the like were constantly coming out of his mouth. Without long thinking, they threw him on his father's shoulder, and carried him to the village. While this mysterious traveler was sleeping, Jordan's mother, a stunning woman named Linda, cooked a whole plate of chicken legs for the stranger, just as he had ordered. As a result, the sweet smell woke the boy up and he started eating them one by one. Linda immediately asked where he was from, and why he was lying on the road so hungry, and the boy added that he and his father had saved his life. When the boy had swallowed all the food he had in his mouth, he said that his name was Wally, and that he was from Adarda, and also asked if Linda knew where the country of Ling was. The girl had previously heard from someone that this country was in the Far East. Now the boys were in the west of the village of Redstone, and the country of Ling was to the east of this place. To get there you have to cross the whole Guland. Then the father burst into the room, so sharply that he frightened his son. Actually, for Wally was told that it was this man who had pulled him out of the woods yesterday. In case the guy doesn't know where to go next yet, he was allowed to stay a couple more nights without any problems. That was just great news for him, because after what he'd been through in the woods, he really needed a rest. The boy decided to get acquainted with his savior, and find out what they were doing together with his son. Jordan was very glad that the boy took the initiative and told him that at the moment they were fixing a magic item, and his father was the only repairman in the village. Wally, I was very surprised to see a magic stone being used as a repair tool. Unfortunately, nothing lasts forever in this world, and even a magical device can break after a long time of use, but a careful repair can extend its life. For small villages like this one, the ministry gives a very limited supply of crystal, so people have no choice but to come here for repairs. Of course, with such unique skills, you can think about moving to the city and start trying to earn good money there, but for David this village is special, because he was born here and feels at home. As another customer came into the shop, Jordan grabbed Wally's hand and ran toward the exit, saying that he was tired and wanted to play with his older brother. As it turned out, this man is already a regular customer here. His magic item breaks regularly. But despite this, the client did not doubt David's professionalism. After a small inspection, the master immediately saw that most of the magic stones that he had recently placed simply broken, and some of them turned into magic powder. So far, it is even difficult to determine the reason for all this, because such cases are extremely rare. As a token of gratitude for the shelter provided and the life saved, Wally decided to give the baby a bag with some useful things in it. At first glance it looked like a bag of gold coins. When Jordan saw it he was very surprised and said he could not take it because they were not helping for money. The boy smiled and said that inside it was not money, but a magic crystal and a crystal stone. These things were worth their weight in gold in the village. The baby grabbed the gift and immediately took it to his mother so that in the future she would find the right use for it. It looked very nice from the outside. Unfortunately, Wally, despite his young age, can no longer run to his mother. The only thing left of her is the crystal she gave him. It was already evening, and the whole family, along with the new tenant, led to the table for a delicious dinner. Jordan, as always, was the most cheerful, loudest, but Linda, as she is supposed to fully correspond to the state of mind of her husband. You can see with the naked eye that he's not in the mood at the moment. In the end, she couldn't bear to see her husband like that anymore, so she asked him what was wrong. David answered that everything was fine and that he was probably just tired today, because he had a lot of work to do. But even so, Wally couldn't stop feeling tense. That night the baby went to bed with him, who fell asleep almost immediately and threw his legs over the guest. The feeling of uneasiness didn't leave Wally even after everyone had gone to bed. He constantly felt that something was wrong. He even began to theorize that he had become paranoid. At the same time, somewhere in the neighboring yards, a small rat ran up to someone else's small magic tractor and did one terrible thing, namely, ate the magic crystal, thanks to which this miracle machine worked. And then there was an instant mutation of the animal, and it was obviously several dozen times larger and very strong, and of course the screams of the rat and the destruction of the houses was heard by everyone in the neighborhood, and they went out into the street. Wally, like he knew something bad was gonna happen. Meanwhile, the street was in complete chaos. People were running in different directions and shouting that the monster was here. This huge rat knew no boundaries in its actions. All those who did not manage to escape, unfortunately, lost their lives almost instantly. Quite by chance, the guys noticed that at the moment in the hands of the monster is the little daughter of their regular customer. First, David ordered his family to go to the neighboring town and find magicians to help, and then rushed towards the rat to try to save the little girl. When the monster was playing with the body of a little girl, he wanted to take her life with his teeth, but David came to the rescue just in time and shot this huge rat right in the face. Unfortunately, it did not change anything dramatically, but at least managed to divert its attention to himself. Because of the strong anger of the monster, threw the girl up, and with great speed began to attack the man. It would seem that there is almost no chance of survival. Just a little more and David will become ordinary fodder. But as suddenly with his sword on the battlefield bursts Wally, he manages to catch the little girl and deprive the rat of his hand. In this way, the guy proves that you don't necessarily need a magician to defeat such a monster. When the opportunity arose, the daughter was safely handed over to her father, who will probably have blue hair after this incident. 40 seconds of rest, and the monster began to attack again. As Wally was well prepared, he took 2 magic stones of boundless water in addition to his sword, and at the right moment, he cast the spell "Power of my sword, destroy the enemy in front of me." The bright blue streaks and strong wind symbolized that the spell was about to take effect. As the monster decided to attack from the air, the guy directed all his power there. In time, a huge blue spire began to form, on which the monster actually got caught. It was an unconditional victory. The rat had absolutely no chance and even the opportunity to strike. Then the explosion was so strong that even people who lived in the neighboring town could see the glow. The next morning the whole village thanked Wally. They couldn't believe that the horror was over, and as a token of their gratitude they asked him to stay a few more days to celebrate the event. He would have loved to, but there was no time for that, because he had already stayed a few days to recover his health. David remembered that the boy was going to Ling, which is a long way from here, so to make the journey easier he decided to give him a cool storage bag from the whole village. Wally was insanely grateful, but initially did not want to take it, because this thing costs a lot of money. Since the people insisted, and asked to take it as a reward for saving the village, the guy did not refuse for a long time and agreed. In the end the whole village saw him off on his long journey. Also the villagers asked him to come back as soon as he could hide. You are greeted by a magical world full of magic. The journey has just begun. Ahead of our hero awaits a lot of adventures and dangers. According to legend, after the demonic dragon was destroyed, from his bones appeared a magic snake, which defeated one of the heroes. When it was over, he created his own family called Snake Bones. After the body of the snake was buried in the ground by the hero who destroyed it, the descendants of the Snake Bones family fought against the snakes for many years. After the long-awaited victory, their country was at peace. Being here now, even it's hard to imagine that there was once a fierce war against snakes in this place. That's what it means to have 4 great families watching over the town. This is definitely not the village Wally came from. Also, the guy couldn't resist the brand new magical equipment and means of transportation. He literally lost the showcase. Suddenly, in the distance, there were shouts of disgruntled people. Some young kid who thought he was a master was purposely ruining the lives of passers-by with his speedy skateboarding on the sidewalks without any regret. So far, he's been very lucky that he hasn't hit anyone. But the question is how much more he can ride without hurting anyone. The first dangerous incident was not long in coming. Because of the strong fright, the little girl just froze on the spot and could not run away in the other direction. At the same distance of 2 meters stood her grandmother, who realized that her granddaughter was about to be maimed. Of course, she tried to reach out to save her, but the distance was too great. Wally was not far away at that moment, and at the very last moment he was able to save the innocent child. The grandmother was overjoyed. Her whole life had just flown before her eyes, but it was only a slight fright. The guy was extremely angry at the skater, because he didn't even spare a small child. He shouldn't just get away with it. But apparently not this time. Unjoy grandmother grabbed the guy by the hood and dragged him to his home, where she thanked him many times for his help, and fed him a very tasty home-cooked meal. Probably all the grandmothers on this planet are delicious cook. But for Wally, it was still very interesting why this woman stopped him and didn't give him a chance to punish him for such terrible behavior. As it turned out, that guy's name was Lucas, and he was the grandson of the Snake Bone family, so none of the ordinary passers-by could say anything to him. In the ancient era, 4 heroes destroyed the dragon and created 4 families that created the outer magic era. Snake Bone is one of them. The 4 heroes obtained a special kind of dragon blood crystal after they went on a campaign against the magic dragon. From that moment on, they became talent holders. At this point in everyday life, magic is an essential part of people, and one must rely on a magic stone to use it. The talent allows you to use magic without the use of energy crystals, which have a mechanism of circulation inside a person. The birth of talent depends only on the lineage, so now the famous talents, these are the highest magi in the Ministry of Magic, namely the descendants of the 4 families. Based on this information, we can assume that Lucas has some talent. But fortunately, this is not the case. Although talents are inherited, not all descendants of the 4 great families can awaken talent. Amid the genetic mutations that sometimes occur, the lineage of talents is strengthened or weakened. Lucas is the youngest grandson of the current owner of the Snake Bone family. After learning that he has no talent, he began to hate ordinary people. Even considering that this guy is not gifted, no one would dare to stop him since he is the grandson of the Snake Bone family. After all, the consequences for this person could be terrible. Despite all this story, Wally still couldn't understand why such a famous family would encourage the horrible deeds of one of their relatives. In order to figure it out, in the middle of the night, the guy went to the house of the Snake Bone family. He also really wanted to find out why the emblem of this family, so similar to his mother's heirloom. Since the door to enter the territory was closed, the guy briefly decided to try to jump the high fence, and get into the territory is not the most legal way. He was fine at first, but then after a stone wall, he hit a magical one, which he hit his head on and fell down. It was quite painful. All the main impact was on his back, and on it was a sword, which made the fall even more painful. The boy couldn't understand how such a weak magic wall could prevent him. Would it be so bad to go home in the middle of the night? In spite of his first failure, Wally was not confused. He took 3 magic stones in his hands and threw them into the scene. Then there was a small explosion that created a hole in the wall, allowing easy access to the property. Well, there's no turning back now. Initially, the guy was feeling pretty relaxed, But that's a big mistake, because the house must be heavily defended. The first danger was not long in coming. Sharp objects started flying out of the darkness at Wally with great speed. Thanks to his phenomenal reaction, he managed to draw his sword in time to defend himself. The knives were so sharp that they even stabbed into the asphalt without any problems. When everything was quiet, the guy asked who he was dealing with. There were guards on the grounds who don't like anyone sneaking in uninvited. In such cases, they don't let anyone out alive. This is the security team of the Snakebone family. Seeing how small they were, the guy started laughing. He just couldn't understand how these gentle pet foxes were entrusted to guard such a family, and called them a professional team, to protect the high-ranking people of this city. In any case, the guys were serious, and they weren't going to talk for long. First, a couple of shurikens went into action, followed by the whole team. They dodged the cold weapons again, but now they had to deal with these aggressive little foxes. Before entering the fight, Wally tried to justify himself by saying that he was not a thief, but just came here on a case. But no one would listen to him. All his words were considered as lies and delusions. In this case, he had to take up his sword and began to at least defend himself. These guards here were stronger than they might seem at first glance, their blows really powerful. Despite their serious intentions, the guy did not lose hope and continued to say that he is not a thief. The main request is to give the opportunity to speak and listen to him. So far to no avail, the guards had their victim in a circle, and were preparing to attack at the same time, to leave no chance of survival for the boy. Now Wally has really come to realize that the Snakebone clan is really strong. Even these foxes won't listen to him, and just use their power. Well, with them pointless to talk, need to run away. To do this had to take in his hand 2 magic crystals, throw them under himself, thereby organizing a huge smoke screen, and while there is a chance to run away in an unknown direction. The foxes were surprised to say the least that it was a human even using magic. When the fog cleared, the guards managed to see Wally running off towards the mansion. They're not to let him disturb my lord in any way. The beautiful lady was watching all of this from the window. Since this wasn't the first time the territory had been broken into, she felt rather calm. This girl's name is Marina. She is another Snakebone heiress. This house was already so well thought out that with just a bracelet on her arm, you can find out information about the person who broke into the territory. According to the information we've gotten, the intruder is the biggest weakling. Well, then the question is how he's still alive. Since the enemy is not much of a threat, the girl completely calmly went to shower, having previously removed her electronic bracelet. In her head does not fit how he even dared to break into the mansion of the Snakebone clan. Meanwhile, in the pursuit of the guy, is already involved not only foxes, but also special works, which are programmed to destroy all enemy targets, indiscriminately. Wally certainly assumed that there is a good defense, but he certainly did not expect to see here flying drones. He didn't want to destroy them until the last moment, so as not to spoil someone else's property. But when he reached a dead end, there was no choice, he had to act. One swing of the sword, he destroyed all 2 drones. After that, the guy asked not to blame him for this destruction, because the guards are the only ones to blame, who don't know about the existence of a diplomatic way of solving problems. Instead of stopping, they attacked him again, but from the back, thus cornering the guy. They were already 90% sure that this was the end and the opponent would not get away, but they did not realize who they were dealing with. Instead of surrendering, Wally fought heroically against 3 foxes who were giving it their all, while calling the guy the dumbest thief they'd ever seen. All these words and actions are actually making things worse and forcing him to take extreme measures. Defending against 3 people while standing in a corner is a difficult task, and it can't last forever. Realizing this, Wally took 3 magic crystals out of his purse and threw them towards the foxes. Then there was a huge explosion that damaged the building quite badly and made a huge hole in the wall. The guards were shocked to say the least. They didn't even know what to do next. The captain was sure that since the mansion was guarded by maids, this thief would soon have to learn to live. When Marina got out of the shower, she couldn't believe that the villain who had broken into the territory was still alive and still running around uncontrollably. the girl decided to intervene and use her magic weapon. She didn't even have time to use it when the guy burst right into her room and accidentally knocked her to the floor. It was so unexpected that the guys didn't even realize what had happened, and for a while they looked at each other ridiculously. Since Marina was almost completely undressed, the guy quickly got off her and apologized for what happened, because it all happened by accident. At first she pretended that she was just shy and did not hold any grudges, but in fact at this time in her head was ripening a dirty plan, how to attack unexpectedly. At one point she slowly rises up and unleashes a barrage of fire at Wally, but Wally's sword, which softened the blow considerably, and allowed him to remain unscathed. But even so, the boy earnestly begged her to stop, and said it wasn't on purpose. But no matter how hard he tried, there was no result. At the first opportunity Marina used her magic weapon. On her body appeared a beautiful battle outfit, and in her hands 2 very sharp swords. Seeing all this horror, Wally, on the background of a psychological breakdown, began to smile, although in his head he realized that now is not to laugh. Marina was very determined. No requests for mercy she is not going to consider, and immediately begins to attack again, the strongest waves of fire directed towards the guy. Already after the second attack it was realized that the girl was using magic without magic crystals. She is one of those gifted with the talent to use magic. To escape another attack, Wally throws 2 more magic crystals on the floor, after which a small stone mountain grows out of the ground and takes the brunt of the attack. After what Marina had seen, it was not surprising that the guards on the street were unable to stop him, even though she is facing an ordinary man. But he is quite good at using magic crystals. For her, it is quite an interesting experience, because she has never fought with such she has never fought before. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Wally decided not to stay here any longer, threw the smoke screen crystals under himself, and quickly started to run away, because this girl can really sooner or later achieve her goal, and we don't need that. Marina obviously didn't want to let him go so easily, so she decided to run after him. At the same time Milord was in his room meditating, but at one moment he heard a noise and asked her what it was. He'd been told that an intruder had gotten into the mansion, his danger ranky, so he shouldn't worry too much. After some thought he told the girl to go and see if it was true. During the escape, Wally, because of his ignorance of the territory, ran into a dead end again, and Marina had no trouble catching up with him. Since he had no place to run to, the girl began to feel extremely calm. That's her first mistake. Never underestimate your opponent. He wanted an answer to the question why no one here would listen to him. He was not a thief, but had come here on business. Initially, Marina kind of wanted to compromise, asked who sent the guy here, but then abruptly changed her mind and said it didn't matter why he was here, because he wasn't coming back alive anyway. Wally urged her not to play with fire, because he doesn't fight with her only because of his personal principles, namely not to hit girls under any circumstances. So once again he asks her to discuss everything peacefully. Marina was very pleased to be called a girl, probably because of her obnoxious character. She rarely hears such words in her address. But even such a pleasant moment did not significantly affect the situation. Marina still felt her weighty production. A gifted person always happens ordinary, and this is the iron rule of this world. Therefore, no magic crystals are not afraid of her. Marina is a direct heir of the Snake Bone family, and all the heirs of the Snake Bone family were great people and possessed incredible talent. In his heart, Wally realized that this was the first time in his life that he was facing such a strong opponent. Since she doesn't like to talk for long, especially with potential corpses, she decided to attack. Generating a huge fireball, she sent it towards the guy, this time to block the blow. Crystals were used to create a huge protective structure made of ice. Immediately after the structure collapsed, the girl ran as hard as she could to attack, and planned to strike a decisive blow. In her personal beliefs, a copy of real magic with crystals would never compare to the power granted from the heavens. Of course, she was right about something. Her fire magic could easily handle ice magic, but let's see if it could help against lightning. When Marina saw the electric crystal, she was shocked to see how he had gotten such a rare item. This time Wally didn't beg her to settle the matter peacefully, but just scalded her with a strong discharge, and defeated the girl with the gift of power, literally in a few seconds. No matter how strong you are in life, there will always be someone who is stronger or more cunning than you. It is important to always treat your opponent with respect, otherwise with a probability of 90% you have already played. While the girl is lying motionless on the floor, the guy decided to take a moment to ask her if she knows what the necklace is, but unfortunately she didn't recognize it. As a friend behind the guy's back, a huge explosion sounded. Someone had punched a hole in the wall to quickly get here as fast as possible. As it turned out, it was the same girl Milord had sent to make sure of everything. Surely Marina lying on the floor would surprise her. The expression on this girl's face was so unpredictable, so Wally thought of nothing better than to just ask who it was, as if this was his home and he lived here. Also from the other side of the hallway came the same guards that had been there in the beginning. The situation is certainly not the most favorable. Because Marina was very offended, she ordered everyone as soon as possible to catch this scoundrel. The most interesting thing is that she is no longer asking him to destroy, but simply catch. Everyone at the same moment ran to the attack. Wally was extremely unhappy with the situation he found himself in. First the talking foxes met him, then the gifted girl who thought she was God on this planet, and now it was the turn of the maid with the big spoon. Just super, not a knight. Though she looks funny with that spoon, but in battle she wields it no worse than a guy with a sword, and her blows are so strong that it's almost impossible to stay on your feet. Wally had no time to get back from the first blow, and she was already attacking to inflict the second one, where he got so much power from. At first it was more or less the same. She attacked with her spoon, the guy fought back, but at one moment her weapon changed its shape and turned into something very sharp. She even managed to scratch his face a little. But it was extremely dangerous. One wrong move and it was the end of the fight. Wally had not been this close to losing his life in a long time. It was almost pointless to keep fighting. She was clearly superior in every way. At this moment, the boy was trying to wait for the next attack, so he could deftly use the crystal, which should help to at least damage her weapon. Taking a few steps back, he set up the crystal that was in his hand and activated it with the help of his opponent's weapon. There was a huge explosion, but it didn't change much. At most it's a few seconds of rest before the next attacks. Marina also warned her maid that this brazen thief is using different magic crystals, so you have to be very careful. The housekeeper is really powerful and fast, and the weapon is shape-shifting, in which case we have to use Plan B to escape, because there's nowhere else to go. The plan is to use the crystal, which allows you to move through space, but not over long distances. At this point it's the only way out. When he started to act, a very bright glow appeared around the guy, and then he just disappeared as if he was never there. He was lucky that he was able to do it before the maid could strike. To say that everyone was surprised is simply not to say anything. They had certainly never seen such a thing. Wally moved outside the area completely without strength, and just fell to the ground. You can say here he is safe, but you cannot stay here long, because at any moment he can be found. The next morning the drones were in full swing surveying the area, and recording all the damage from the previous night. Even the news was talking about the situation. Even though some weakling broke into the mansion, martial law has been declared in the city. People are demanding answers why all this is necessary. By the way, the racer's name is Sophia. She's gonna show everyone what went down in the house last night on video. The people were shown how the thief defended himself with crystals and was able to overpower Marina. It's really shocking that he has no talent, and he's just good with rocks and a sword. And then they were shown how Wally disappeared into space, and they shut their mouths. Really a thief and really dangerous. But what does martial law have to do with it? My Lord Eugene also had an answer to that question. A fragment fell on the camera where the guy shows the necklace. The counselors couldn't believe their eyes. Where did he get that emblem from? Specifically for everyone here, she's assigned something very important. The number one task at the moment is to get rid of him, otherwise all the efforts of the 4 families over the years will be lost. Now no one sitting here should have any desire to object to martial law in the city. When Eugene was alone with himself, he went to the box and took out a photograph of 5 heroes. He apologized to one of them, and in his mind said that he is ready to carry this sin on his shoulders for the rest of his life. No forgiveness for him, but it's all for the sake of family and stability in the world. And then burns. The picture sounds all very mesmerizing, but it's still unclear why they have such a reaction to this emblem. Apparently the Black Day has come, for which absolutely every person on this planet is preparing. Looking into the distance from his balcony, Eugene turned to his hidden squad of snakes. It turned out to be 5 girls dressed as maids, each of whom has a unique power. He ordered them to return here that guy at any cost. Sophia asked if he wanted him here alive or not. Milord replied that he didn't care at all, and left the choice to his maid, but if it was possible it would be nice to see him here and talk a little. Meanwhile, in the house of the grandmother, who yesterday fed Wally a delicious home-cooked meal, reigned joy and happiness. Just granddaughter was about to go outside to play. But when the little girl opened the door, she saw not the most pleasant picture for her childish eyes. Wally crawled under their door in the middle of the night, and stayed there on the floor until morning. The girl screamed and told her grandmother. They dragged the boy home and put him on the bed, and he slept for a while and finally woke up. He had a bad headache and at first, he couldn't understand where he was at all. Yesterday at the Snakebone Mansion, the guy almost lost his life. Then Granny wondered what Wally had done, because the town had declared martial law and put out a manhunt for him. Now that's news in the morning, that's what I need. With snake bones in the family, times were tough. Maria went back to her daily training, and she was also very angry that some guy was able to defeat her with just stones. Then one of the mustard ones came up to her to talk a little about the situation. Maria fiercely argued that if it hadn't been for his sneaky tricks she wouldn't have lost, for she had the talent of centuries of family bones. The maid interrupted her as soon as she had a chance, because it would take a long time to hear her. She had come to report the martial law in the city, which had been imposed to catch the thief. Hearing this information, the girl immediately went to the exit. She asked not to tell her father about it, because at the moment she wants only one thing, with her own hands to destroy this thief, and wash away the shame that is now discussed at least the whole city. Grandma helped Wally as much as she could, fixed his wounds, gave him a cap to cover his face and a chance to sleep. But it was time to say goodbye, because now he couldn't stay in one place for long. Now it's urgent to figure out how to get out of this town unnoticed. There were literally cards on the street discussing what happened last night. Most people really couldn't understand how martial law could be imposed because of one thief. It's been very quiet in the city lately, and this happened to you. There are also rumors of Snake Bones looking for this man to punish him severely. Also on the news literally every hour there was a breaking news report that last night an unknown thief broke into the Snakebone Mansion. If anyone is this person, please report any information immediately. It's a good thing Wally had the sense to change his clothes. On the way the guy saw a crystal store. It was a very good find, because after yesterday's battle he had spent a lot of crystals. We must be sure to replenish the supplies. At the entrance he was kindly greeted by the cashier, who was clearly in a good mood. Wally said that he wanted to buy some magic crystals, and handed over a list of 3 of each of the crystals listed on the list. The cashier took the list with her, and asked him to wait a bit while she packed them all up. While the guy was waiting, he decided to see what was offered on the showcase. A very interesting Rubik's Cube came into his eyes. The cashier was quite prompt, and said that the price of all these crystals was 350 coins. Before paying, Wally decided to ask what this interesting item was. The girl went crazy. She told him with such interest that this thing was from the Ministry of Magic, the object of which was left from an ancient magical relic. Legend has it that this ancient relic was linked to one of the 4 families. Unfortunately now this potential magical power is wavering, because mankind doesn't know how to open it, but anyway it's a priceless old antique. Proven to be very good, of course, so the guy decided to ask how much it was worth. The price was a staggering 5,000 coins, of course, because it's a rare ancient magical creation. Anyway, Wally only had 1,500 on hand, at least that's what he said. So the cashier offered 1,500 and another 1,500, just brilliant marketing that worked well. Since there's practically no money left, the guy doesn't feel very good. By the way, after washing the cube looks much nicer, now we can try to open it somehow, in case it works. So far, even with magic channeled into it, it doesn't work. Wally decided to torture it for now. After all, this object is connected with one family, and put it in his purse. For some reason inside the bag, slowly but surely it began to be attracted to the necklace. Apparently there is some deep connection between the two objects. On the way, the boy heard a couple of men discussing the night's events, but in addition, one of them said that recently people have been disappearing in the city and its surroundings. He suspects that all these events may be planned. Also talking about the Wagram industrial zone, the man said that there are no snake bones in the country, in fact only mutants. The interlocutor promptly gagged him and asked him not to talk about this topic here, because they are in the industrial park, and its owners are very close to snake bones. Even now he wanted to get a glimpse of the Wagram industrial area, so he went there immediately, and Maria, who would do anything for her revenge, was waiting for him around the corner. I wonder where they could be hiding the mutants the guys at the coffee shop were talking about. Suddenly behind him the guy starts to feel some kind of movement, and it turned out to be a huge barrage of fire, which Marina threw at him. Wally was surprised, to say the least, that this woman found him so easily. Of course he had disgraced the heiress of the Snakebone family. It would be easier for her to lose her life than to live with this. She had assured the guy that he couldn't leave Snakebone country alive, the insolent thief. He wasn't an impudent thief. Wally hadn't broken into the building to steal anything, but to talk, plus there had been repeated requests to disperse peacefully, but they had all been refused. Of course, she didn't want to listen again, she just started attacking. He barely manages to hold back these blows. This woman is just crazy, for her personal status is more important than anything else on this planet. Since the guy had no desire to fight at all, he again decided to try to escape. Marina was sick of chasing after him, but she had no choice. This time the escape is without the use of stones, which is strange, and it's also towards an industrial zone. The whole Snakebone country is looking for him right now. Since he's already been spotted, it might be hard to escape. The guy was followed by another huge fireball. The situation was very tense. At last it was time to use the crystal, which allowed him to move through space, and then to slowly make his way up the wall. Wally must have thought that he had almost escaped and had relaxed a little. But this time it's not so simple. Marina realized that about all the same will be, so she prepared herself, and took a magical equipment called soaring shoes. With their help you can safely fly to the roof of the building. Meanwhile, Wally was already walking around the house and theorizing that no one would ever want to marry a woman like Maria. She also made such a racket, I wish no one would hear it, when suddenly, by accident, the boy smelled formalin and a very slight odor of blood. Then remotely he heard some footsteps, and tried to listen, but instead of the sound of footsteps this time sounded the most powerful fire strike from Marina. She tracked where the guy is, and almost hit him. Now the girl is fully aware of her production and how defenseless her opponent is. Lying on the floor, Wally even did not allow the thought that now will come his end, because he clearly heard how behind the back of the girl growled something terrible. Then this monster from behind attacked Marina. The guy was not confused and pulled her out from under the blow at the last moment. Because the guys hit the ground too hard, they lay on top of each other for a while like last time, and then at a certain point, Marina started to pretend she didn't like it and lightly beat the man who had just saved her life. Even though it did happen, she adamantly refused to accept that fact. In general, this monster is called the Industrial Zone Guard, is the most advanced snake-bone magic technology, which should not attack the members of the snake-bone family. Apparently it's not working properly at the moment, and this thing is considered advanced magical technology. Who would ever think of that? It looks as horrible as possible. This creature has no skin, and its left arm is completely mechanical, It's probably using it to solve all the issues in terms of battles. In this area he seemed to be not alone. There were at least 3 such monsters, and all of them were of the same type. Also behind them the guys heard hissing. A couple more creatures approached them from behind. Is it really those who are called the guards of the industrial district? Marina didn't even have anything to answer these questions, because she herself was in shock from what was happening. Anyway, now was not the time for conversation. You need to think about how to save yourself in this situation. Wally was already ready to take the fight, and the girl could not get up from her knees. One day the guy already faced a mutant-like rat in Redstone Village. It was bloodthirsty and had destructive power. If the girl does not want these things to destroy everything in the town, she will have to take the sword and fight. In this case, even though there is a thief next to her, she will have to fight him together for the good of the town. Before the guys scattered in different directions, the girl asked Wally not to lose his life from this garbage, because it should be done by her personally, and not by someone else. Initially the guy tried to make the most ordinary sword strike to check how powerful the opponent was, but this strike was intercepted without any problems with the help of a metal arm. Well, in this case there is no way to save money. We'll have to use crystals, and give a few nasty blows to these monsters, to make them calm down a little. Marina in turn started with her trump cards. Her swords were covered with flames, for a more effective strike. Even during the battle Wally had time to show signs of attention, namely, to be careful because these things are too tenacious. In response to this, the girl showed only rudeness and discontent, saying that she would deal with them in no time at all. But at the same moment she made the worst mistake of the fight. Instead of helping her partner or making sure there were no more enemies, she started bragging about her strength and saying Wally can't do anything without rocks. I think it's clear to the dog in the neighbor's yard, because he's just a normal human being by nature. And here is the first dangerous situation. Did not take long to wait. From the back of the girl attacked the second monster, which she simply lost sight of, so to save her guy had to take a risk and distracted from his fight to help her. If he was even 1 second too late, then everything could be completely different. Instead of thanking her, she said she could do it on her own, and that she didn't need help, because with a temper like that, no one would ever marry her. While Marina said how cool she was, the guy had already dealt with at least 2 monsters, and was just about to finish with the third. This time, her partner decided not to stand aside and help in this difficult battle. The 2 of them were several times stronger, so they dealt with the third monster pretty quickly. A couple of good scalding blows and he falls off his feet. The physical strength of these mutants is incredible, and they have an unusual case. Most likely it is some kind of material and not the body of a human. While Guy was studying the monster, Marina quietly came up behind him and put her sharp sword to his head. These creatures are the secret of the family bones, and whoever found out must forfeit his life. But since the girl herself was no less interested in the secret of creating such creatures, she wouldn't do it, and even on the contrary, she made pretty eyes and asked Wally to help her in this matter. Surely she already knows that at least twice this would-be thief saved her life, and that's something to think about. In any case, for now it doesn't mean they are friends. After everything is over, the girl again promised to straighten him out. Most likely this was said to make the guy just not to relax and feel the distance between them. Despite being a member of the Snakebone family, Marina had no idea that the underground industrial zone was so big. There is also a strong smell of some chemicals and blood. Eventually the boys came to the end of the tunnel. In front of them stood a huge door, behind which most likely there are answers to all their questions. Wally was very perturbed when he saw this lock. It looked more like a mechanism for some kind of safe. Marina didn't worry about it, because she thoroughly knows how all the locks in the family work. One slight movement of the hand, and the huge door begins to open slowly. At least the older sister in the family has been thoroughly trained in this. At first, because of the darkness, nothing was visible, but when the guys came closer, what they saw shocked them. In this room was a whole bunch of capsules filled with water, and all of them contain at least 1 mutant, which apparently in the future were to become the guards of this industrial zone, at least so they were called. All the bodies that are in these capsules are not just taken from the air, Most likely they used to be ordinary people who were caught on the street, dragged here and experimented on. Human experimentation is taboo all over the world, but the snake bone family decided to do it. Wally said that while he was walking down the street, he accidentally heard rumors that someone was breeding mutants here. For ordinary people, the Wagram Industrial Zone is the national energy and water crystal refining plant in the snake bone country, and this is where the energy crystals are extracted and distributed. If Marina understands correctly, the Wagram Industrial Zone belongs to the Roland Corporation, an organization under the Ministry of Magic, not under the control of the snake bone family. But even so, this kind of thing can't be missed by the snake bone family. They are 100% involved. In that case, the guys suggested looking around here, in case they have some clues the day after tomorrow. For this, the guys decided to split up and go in different directions. On the way, Wally saw the entrance to some room. Of course, interest took over and he wanted to get in. The door was open and it was no trouble at all to get in. The first thing that catches the eye is a big mess. I wonder what happened here. There were also some documents on the table. Maybe this information was related to mutants. But when the guy took this sheet in his hands, he realized that he simply could not read what was written there. The handwriting was very unclear, and in what language it was written, by the way, too. Then he paid attention to the boxes that stood next to it. Most likely the things that the explorers left behind. It all looked very curious. The clothes themselves were very worn out, and in one of the boxes there was a gold watch. When he opened it, he saw a picture of Marina and some other girl he knew very well. It only raised more questions. Wally suddenly heard a noise. He immediately jumped up and ran back to Marina, where she was already fighting with some monster. It was an incredibly strong mutant. From his back came out a large number of metal snakes that can use magic. In general, mutant in principle is not inherent to use magic. The girl urged not to stand idly by, as soon as possible to help her, because to overcome such a thing alone is almost impossible. Of course, such a situation is almost impossible to refuse defenseless people, so he wanted his sword and ran into battle. She warned the phrase that these guns are very powerful and fast, and the fact that he uses magic, it is most likely the result of experiments on mutants. What to do in a situation like this? After analyzing him for a while, Marina realized that her flame magic could hurt him. Wally's main task was just to distract his attention, and the girl at that moment should strike her decisive blow. The mutant pointed his guns at Wally and fired a shot. Thanks to his magic crystals, he managed to protect himself. At this point, Marina did her red work. While absolutely all the cannons were pointed in the other direction, stealthily she destroyed them with her fire swords. Well, now the mutants supposedly won't be able to attack anymore. That's the real power of fire. When all this costume began to fall apart, Marina saw the face of the very girl with whom she was not pictures in the watch. Apparently it is some very close relative or friend. Because of the strong shock, she froze in one place and could not do anything with herself. Apparently the battle did not end there. The mutant girl with her mouth began to generate a powerful magical charge, in order to purposefully make a shot in the direction of Marina. Since she was immobilized, she just stood and looked at it all. Wally realized in time that something was wrong and was able to pull her out of harm's way in time. It was very dangerous, of course, and they might not have survived. But even this fact could not bring Marina out of such a serious condition. The only thing she managed to say was the girl's name, Tatiana. She still wasted no time, and started generating power for a new strike again. Marina urged her not to harm Tatiana in any way, because this person was very dear to her. In that case, it was necessary to think of a way to calm her down in a more peaceful way. It was bad luck that this mutant could move fast and shoot fire endlessly. Wally noticed the chaos crystal on her forehead, but where she'd gotten it from, it was forbidden in the world, so it was a long shot, because the only way to calm her down was to take it away. With the help of a couple of crystals and his sword, the guy decided to try to break her fire strike into two parts, and swiftly direct his power directly to the crystal. It's very hard to believe, but he succeeded. The magic of the crystals was stronger, and without much effort was able to achieve its goal. After the ritual, the chaos crystal shattered into small particles, and Tatiana fell to the floor completely exhausted. Marina immediately jumped up and ran to her aid. Wally also fell down, because he had to use a lot of strength for such a difficult maneuver, but nevertheless he was able to get up on his own. 476, 477, 478. Fortunately the girl was conscious. She also could not believe her eyes. In front of her stands Marina, with whom they brought their entire childhood. But now there is a very important question: how come she ended up in this laboratory, and she was made a mutant with a forbidden in the world crystal? All the ladies of the Snakebone family were brought up quite strictly. It was done in order to bring up a future heir and a talented magician. In the family there is only rivalry between relatives and no so-called affection or friendship. On the day when Tatiana's father came to get a job as a gardener, the girls met for the first time. The girls looked at each other in a special way, and one could assume that they would find a common language. That day, as always, Marina practiced hard. But since she had little experience at that time, she could fall during the performance of certain elements. The older brothers and sisters, who also went outside, did not miss the opportunity to mock their relative after she fell down. In such cases Tatiana could never stand idly by, so she immediately ran out to help and stood up for the girls she had seen for the first time in her life. Since Tatiana was just the daughter of a gardener who hadn't even gotten a job yet, the guys were not scared of her, and even started threatening to fix her face a little. Such ugly behavior of the brothers very much angered Marina, and she said that she would never forgive them for this. In the midst of intense anger, the girl had no trouble dealing with her 3 older brothers, and when it was all over she introduced herself and asked what her little protector's name was. So that's how they met, and from that moment on they began their strong alliance. As an ordinary person, Tatiana was not afraid of people from the Snakebone family and protected the gifted person without even hesitating. For several years after that incident, the girls were practically inseparable. And it wasn't about family or status at all, they were just best friends, and that's all it said. One day Marina made a small gift for her, namely a watch with their photo together. Tatiana was very pleased and promised to cherish it very much. The gifted girl had never given gifts to anyone before, it was her first experience with her only friend. The girls were 100% sure that their friendship would never end. But one rainy, unpleasant evening, Tatiana came to visit her friend, asked her to go outside to inform her that from that moment on they were no longer friends. Then without any explanation she just left. And now, after a certain number of years, Marina finally has the chance to learn the truth about why Tatiana decided to leave her that day. In fact, it's no secret to me that the corporation is conducting human experiments here. At the time, the man who does this was called the man-made genius of the Z. He and his team were engaged in the artificial talent program. Then they were trying to create a means of anthropogenic transformation of gifted acquired genius. Tatiana was one of the test subjects. Telling about it then was useless, because in the end the Snakebone family would have forced the girl away from Marina. The one who is the heir to the Snakebone family cannot have a weakness, and the weakness at that moment for Marina was Tatiana. However, the talent possessing multiple magical abilities that the scientists had created had failed. Even the bodies of the mutants could not accept the magical element, and lost their lives from the hellish pain. The few who managed to survive became just walking magical fighting machines, with no will of their own. That's where all artificial intelligence ends. But there must be some way, like some so-called magic patch. Tatiana assured me that there was no way to cure herself, because the blood in her body had turned into a magical liquid, and now she could no longer be considered human. If the magical device to keep the magic circulating in her was destroyed, it would take her life. With tears in her eyes, Tatiana asked her friend to destroy her life and the life-supporting device, and let her lose her life like a normal person. It would be her last request. If the girls didn't know each other and didn't consider themselves friends, Marina certainly wouldn't do it. But since it's the only thing she can do at the moment, Marina tearfully tries to fulfill her request. Before everything happens, Tatiana says that when she first met her best friend, it was the best day of her life, and that no matter what, they will always be friends. Wally also did not forget to give Marina the thing he had found in that mysterious room. The girl took it very rudely, and asked the insolent thief to help her. The guys took the girl's body outside, with the help of a magic crystal drew some symbol, and put Tatiana on it. Then with the help of her superpower, Marina set fire to the body of her friend. Literally in a few minutes, the gorilla is no longer just a body but in the making. This place should not exist in this world. There have been too many terrible experiments on people who might not have been. The same mad scientist who invented this industrial zone and everything in it was watching through the cameras. Today he lost his toys, but he found some rare material that would be a pleasure to hunt. Something about Wally really caught his eye. Since it was already late at night, the guy decided to bring his new girlfriend to visit his grandmother, who sheltered him when he first came to town. Therefore Marina cooked the most delicious home-cooked food, from which she was just delighted. In general, it was a big deal for Grandma that the eldest sister of the 7 snake guests entered her house. Since the boys ate everything too quickly, Grandma decided to immediately bring more noodles. Wally, it was incomprehensible why Marina spoke very politely to everyone around her, and still spoke harshly to him. To keep the guy from asking too many questions, she decided to give him a little fire. Until the girl knows the whole truth about her family, she won't want to return to the snake bone house. After what she saw today, there's still a lot to be sure. Then the little girl came running into the room, her hands full of the mattress she would make for her so-called sister. She wanted to sleep with Marina very much tonight. For excessive insistence, grandmother did not yell at her, but at the same moment the girl said that she did not mind to sleep with her. Well, it was wonderful news, and the little girl immediately ran to lay a blanket for her. Her granddaughter had no parents or siblings, so she was always so happy to have visitors. Looking at all this domestic atmosphere, Marina realized that she had not been with ordinary people for many years. Meanwhile, the snake bone house is troubled. All the city guards have been deployed and they couldn't find the guy. Besides, the industrial area has been attacked. If no clear answer is given to the partner, there could be big problems. And one more big news: Marina is missing. The next morning, the guys went to Roland Corporation. Although it is located in the land of bones, the Vagram industrial zone really belongs to this corporation. They provide magic technology. In order to avert all suspicion, Wally had to disguise himself as an ordinary maid, who works in the house of snake bones. Of course, this arrangement of events he did not like, but there is no other way. Because of last night's events, security here has been greatly improved. From now on, the guy is considered Marina's personal maid, and if he wants to go unnoticed, he'll have to fulfill her every whim. Meanwhile, inside the building, the cops are discussing how to behave in case they don't notice a suspicious person. They don't even realize their target is right there. The host was surprised to say the least when he saw Marina enter the building, but nevertheless greeted her and asked what the purpose of the visit was. Someone in front of the information that yesterday was the Law Industrial District. The whole family was very upset, so Marina personally agreed that she would come and check everything herself. Also, according to the rules, the host asked who was the beautiful girl next to her. Marina replied that she was the new maid in her family. In that case, it's okay. We can go through. For a moment, Wally thought he'd been exposed and was about to start using the crystals to retreat, but it seemed to be all right for now. The first thing, the guys went to the northern part, and finally the guy could take off all that maid outfit, and he was also surprised at how big the database is here. How it is possible to find anything here at all. It's really hard to do, but instead of complaining you have to hurry up, otherwise you definitely won't get anywhere. To speed up the process, it was decided to split up and search all the boxes one by one. Even though Marina asked him to hurry up, the guy still doesn't understand what he has to do. After all, he doesn't have a bracelet like her to hack into the server. By a happy coincidence, the wall he decided to lean on turned out to be a secret passage to the next room. And so it was by chance that he had contributed to the operation. Of course, he made it sound as if he had not found the passage by chance, but knew it was there. What they call a database is really just a disguise, and that's where the secret is. Marina said it so confidently in an empty room that the guy even laughed a little. But if you look closely, it's not just a room as it may seem at first glance. On the wall was an emblem of a family of snake bones, and if you touch it, it turns a bright red light and becomes like a button. And when you press it, it opens up a passage right under your feet that leads very deep down.